Good morning, good afternoon, good evening everyone. Saan man po kayong panig ng mundo naroon. Welcome to the 112th episode of the Stop COVID Deaths webinar series brought to you by the University of the Philippines. Thank you for being a part of our credible online community. And to all those who have just discovered us for today, welcome po at sana po masiyahan po kayo sa ating pag-uusapan today. And as you have seen in the chat, pag-uusapan po natin and also in the posters po, no, ay isa sa inyong favorite topics, if not your favorite topic, patungkol po sa pagkain. Pero right now po, nararamdaman po natin yung medyo yung kirot ng high food prices na meron po tayo. So napapatanong po tayo, will this lead to more maybe nutrition problems or challenges sa bansa po natin? Especially malnutrition in our country has been a chronic, silent, and insidious threat to health and development. Malnourished children in particular are prone to infections and a vicious cycle of disease and further malnutrition. So the pandemic has made the situation a bit worse. And we need to ask ourselves, ano po ba ang nutritional status ng bansa natin today? Why are the prices of food napakataas? And how can the average family survive in an environment where good food is limited and unaffordable? So for today's topic on the Stop COVID Deaths webinar series, we'd be able to discuss yung ating food and nutrition and food security na meron po tayo. And something that has been a challenge and against the backdrop na meron pa rin po tayong pandemic and also the ongoing war in Ukraine. I'm Dr. Raymond Francis Sarmiento, Director of National Telehealth Center, National Institutes of Health, University of the Philippines, Manila. Always a pleasure to be with all of you during our regular Friday. And always a pleasure po because I get to share hosting duties with my partner po, our Adjunct Research Faculty at the National Telehealth Center and also international renowned public health communication expert, Dr. Susie Pineda Mercado. Dr. Susie.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Raymond. At magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. We'd like to greet everyone who's here with us today. And for those of you who are watching on the playback or on YouTube and Facebook right now, we'd like to welcome you. We've got a very exciting topic today. As Raymond said, it's about your favorite topic, food. And, sabi ko nga, Raymond, no, parang sobrang taas ng presyo ng pagkain, no? And I think people are trying to do their best to cope. Pero pag-usapan natin yan, tayo naman mga frontliners, health workers, paano natin matutulungan yung mga pasyente, di ba, na nakikita nating medyo hirap na to make ends meet, but they need to keep themselves and their families healthy. So, alam niyo, kung walang nutrisyon, wala tayong kalusugan, ito talaga ay hindi nabibigyan ng pansin, pero talagang napaka-importante. Raymond, before we proceed, I'd like to greet all of our students of Nutrition and Dietetics from UP Los Baños, UP Diliman, PUP from Manila, from UST. Magparamdam naman kayo sa chat dyan kung nandyan kayo. And the Philippine Association of Nutrition, or PAN, for being with us today. And we hope in the future we'll talk more about nutrition. This is a very, very important topic. Okay, so you may have noticed that our title, Stop COVID Deaths, has changed a little bit in the billboard. So in the beginning, we were only talking about COVID, but now we're talking about C, still talking about the current COVID problems, O, other outbreaks, D, viruses, I, infections, and D, disasters. So stop COVID deaths. Medyo nag-level up na tayo, no? We're broadening our scope of discussions, and we really want to bring you the latest information that we can. In fact, I know all of you want to know the latest news here and abroad, and it's for that reason that we have a segment called the News Update.
Okay, Dr. Susie, yung pong balita na nasagap ko is may patungkol naman sa bagong ultrasound sticker. So, it's a little bit of a miniature size because you'll be able, how it works is that you'll be able to put some sort of parang part of a device but not really a probe onto your skin. So, pwede po siyang mag-maintain
A
doon for
team of
at least
engineers
2
have designed a
hours.
stamp-sized device that sticks to the skin and can provide continuous ultrasound imaging of
Ayan,
internal organs for
makikita nyo po
48
meron pong
hours.
ina-apply
The
na
current
parang
design
gel sa
requires
ilalim.
connecting the stickers to instruments that translate the reflected sound wave.
That one po kasi is able to stay on your skin for 2 hours. So if it has to be continuously placed there, parang Holter monitoring, pero kunyari if you need to monitor, let's say a pregnant mother na high risk pregnancy, then that could have implications in that regard. Although syempre medyo maliit lang siya, no? And you could put side by side multiple stamp like stickers in that regard. But if you put it there, then there really would be, and there's really minimal po na side effects kung meron man po. And there really would be any reason for them to just to go into a healthcare facility because they could be remotely monitored. So that's one of the things being developed right now in the research bench. But hopefully that's something that could be later on pushed to the bedside. Dr. Susie?
Yeah, okay. Also in the news, a study is showing that the lining of kids' noses are better able than those of adults to guard against SARS-CoV-2 infection, according to Australian researchers who have reported that it seems like the lining of the children's noses have a more pro-inflammatory response compared to the adults, especially against SARS-CoV-2. And in this study, actually it's a small study, Raymond, no? They studied 23 healthy children and 15 healthy adults, but they could see here that the virus did not replicate very well in the noses of children. So baka kaya talagang yung mga bata mas, they're less likely to get COVID-19. But it's a small study, but I think it's something we want to watch and we want to understand because it's no? Different age groups have different responses to the COVID-19 virus. And that's our news for today. Next week, we'll be back with more news for you on the news update. Okay, tuloy-tuloy tayo, Raymond, no? Our topic today is very, very interesting. And as usual, we have brought you the best speakers we could get, and you will be very happy to meet them. I think food is something that's all very close to our hearts, but we have forgotten that even before the pandemic, about 30% of children under 5 years old were stunted. So, sabihin po, hindi sila lumalaki nung dapat, nung angkop, no? And I was looking at the global figures on this. The global stunting is only about 15%. Tayo, it's 30%. And other countries with similar levels of income have rates of stunting that averages about 20% of the children under 5. So that means, pag stunted po, ibig sabihin, of course, our expert will talk about this, no? Ibig sabihin po, mahabang panahon, na kulang talaga yung kinakain, nagkukulang yung kinakain, at kulang yung sustansya ng kinakain nila. So it's two things, it's the amount of food, it's also the quality of food. And in some parts of the country, like Barm, Mimaropa, Bicol, Western Visayas, the stunting is about 40%. So I don't know, we don't really know after the pandemic what has happened, but we are very concerned about this because there's that window of growth of 0 to 5 years old. And if our Filipino kids don't make it, wala na silang chance, no, to catch up later. So very important topic, and we will talk about why this is happening, what we can do, and what kind of practical advice you can give to our families and to our patients. Ano bang mapapayo natin para hindi po maging malnourished yung mga bata. Okay, so Raymond, we always like to listen to what the person on the street is thinking. You want to cue this?
Thank you, Dr. Susie. For all those who are joining us for the very first time, meron po tayong tinatawag na person on the street video just to be able to set our discussion into context. Just a very short video that the webinar series team has always comes up with on a weekly basis, wherein we ask the common folks a question or series of questions. And for this week's questions po, we ask them, magkano ang ginagastos ninyo sa pagkain sa isang araw? Paano ninyo pinagkakasya ang inyong budget para sa buong pamilya para magkaroon ng masustansyang pagkain? Please watch this.
I think usually we spend like 400 pesos a day. Good for 2 person na po yun. Kasi we love cooking actually. So mas gusto namin mga lutong bahay. So instead na magpa-deliver ng food, yan, nagluluto na lang po ako.
Ang nagagastos ng family ko sa pang-araw-araw namin ay approximately nasa mga, let's say, 500 pesos kada araw.
Isang araw, ang budget ko lang talaga for myself. Like, kino-close ko na siya sa 150 pesos.
Punta ako ng palengke, siguro yung hawak kong 200, may karne, may isda. Hanggang hapunan o minsan kinabukasan pa namin nakakain kasi dadalawa naman kami.
Pagkain, usually, nakukuha ko lang yung kung ano lang yung food sa bahay. Pero if I have to budget, siguro mga about 200 pesos a day.
Actually, lumaki po kami sa like province or sa north. So, mas mahilig kami sa gulay. So, every time po na may mga kamag-anak kaming bumababa dito, nagpapadala kami ng mga gulay.
Para sure ako na healthy pa din yung nakakain ko, bumibili ako ng mga lutong bahay, pero more on gulay.
So, bilang ako din yung nagluluto sa aming bahay, no, ginagawa kong objective every time na maghahain ako sa pamilya ko na at least magkaroon ng gulay yung mga kinakain namin.
Yung halimbawa, nagprito ako ng isda, nilalagay ko sa ref. Para kinabukasan, kung gusto ko siyang lagyan ng gulay, nalalagyan ko siya ng gulay. Kasi naiprito ko man, o kaya halimbawa, hindi man siya prito, napapaksiw, kahit 3 days, pwede siyang makain kasi nakalagay sa ref.
Hindi ko talaga siya naiisip to be healthy sa budget ko na yon. Kung ano lang available na nakikita ko most of the time sa fast food, ganyan.
Iwasan namin na bumili sa mga supermarket kasi alam naman natin na medyo may patong doon. So, madalas kami napunta sa palengke. At syempre, ang pinupuntahan namin ay yung mga suki na ng pamilya namin. Para meron din kaming tipid na, may tipid din yung mabibili namin.
May gustong bili na hindi ko muna inuuna yung mas pinapriority ko yung pagkain kesa dun sa mga bagay na halimbawa gusto kong bumili ng damit o mas priority ko yung pagkain kesa sa bibili ako ng mga damit na pwede naman sa ibang araw.
Okay, thank you very much, TVUP. Raymond, our title nga was, kasya ba yung 250 pesos sa isang pamilya? And some people were asking, why are you saying 250 pesos? Well, apparently, every household spends about half of its income on food, about 50%. No? And if you have only one worker, one wage earner in the family, it's 500 pesos. 250 na lang yung para sa pagkain. So, I think ngayon, parang nakikita ko nga nun sa supermarket yung manok hindi na buo No, parang pira-piraso na lang. Kasi na masyadong mahal bumili ng isang buong manok and so on. But I think this is a very timely topic and thank you TVUP for getting those very candid interviews. Merong alalang-alala, merong ganon, pero meron ding hindi niya alam parang bahala na kung anong nandyan, no? So, iba-iba. Raymond, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Susie. No, I noticed also that different people, we were able to cover the circumstances of different people, which was just giving a sense na, based on where you are and what really are your priorities right now in your life, the level of maybe worry, kumbaga, is different for different people. Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping po for today. Certificates of attendance will be given to those who have watched at least 50% of the webinar duration. Ito po ang itsura ng ibinibigay po namin na certificate of attendance that we have completed for 110 webinars already. I believe there are only a few more for webinar number 111. So if you feel you should have received a webinar, with the exception of 111, but you have been able to not receive that, please email us at stopcovidets@up.edu.ph, so we'll be able to know na ano po yung webinar na kailangan po na nakatanggap kayo, at we'll check our database po. Okay? So part of our discussion for today, and this is for the benefit of those joining us for the first time, is that we always employ a standard panel discussion format, and after our speakers have presented, which you all know today we'll be discussing how can the average family survive in an environment where good food is limited and unaffordable. We'll have those questions po coming in, not just in the Zoom, but also in YouTube and in Facebook. We'll be entertaining them, those questions, scanning this platform so that we'll be able to ask them directly to our speakers. So if you have any questions or comments na po, no, please put them, lalo na kung nasa labas po kayo ng Zoom, please put them in the comment section. But if you are in the Zoom, please use our Q&A box po na nandito po sa ilalim ng inyong screen. But before we proceed to our webinar proper, meron po tayong fun quiz, which is always meron po tayong maikli lang naman na intro video para sa inyo. Go ahead, TVUP.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Kumusta na kayo lahat?
Hi, I'm Doc Susie, the mini Doc Susie.
And I'm Doc Radar, the mini Doc Raymond. Are you ready to have fun? Simply open your browser to www.slido.com and enter your code to participate. We will discuss your answers during the panel discussion later on in the program.
We will have it flashing on your screen in a bit, and we look forward to your answers. Masaya at madali lang ito. Join na!
Natatawa pa rin ako, Raymond, pag nakikita ko yan. Sige, okay. Game, ito pa, fun quiz na.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. Thank you to TVUP. We have 2 questions for today. Please let us know if you're able to see all of the options po. No? Medyo, it's a little bit wordy, but we hope that's something that you're still able to see. For those who are joining us outside of the Zoom, you can join via slido.com. Open your browsers and type in slido.com. And when prompted, input the code 5405717. That's 5405717 for you to participate in our fun quiz. Ang una nating katanungan, opportunities for frontline health professionals to contribute to better food systems, except, okay, so iisa lang po ang tamang kasagutan dito, prescribing better dietary choices for their patients. Option 2, supporting local food systems. Option 3, strengthening linkages between food production and consumption. Option 4, mindful modeling of food choices. And option 5, strategic engagement with food environment actors. Wag po kayong baka ma-intimidate po kayo sa mga termino natin. This will be explained naman po by our expert later on.
Teka muna, Raymond.
Yes,
Parang question, di ba? Ang tanong is, except.
Oh,
diba?
Yung hindi. Yes po.
Yung hindi. Okay. Naku, ang hirap naman. O sige, game. Pero matututunan natin yan, di ba? Kung hindi natin alam ang sagot, that's a good thing. Because it means that we can learn. Okay, go,
Correct.
Raymond.
Correct. So, before we move on to second question, we'd like to greet those joining us from the Lucena Medical Mission Group General Hospital in Quezon Province, from the Food and Nutrition Research Institute of the DOST in Taguig, from the Department of Social Welfare and Development, Mimaropa Field Office, okay, and UP Mindanao in Davao, Lambunaw Rural Health Unit in Lambunaw, Iloilo, Malabang Lanao del Sur, yung po ang ating mga nanonood. So, Miss Jane Villanueva from Iloilo City, also watching, mga regular from UST Hospital, Center of Kidney Diseases. Maraming salamat po. Car Sigma District Hospital, thank you for joining us. Those from Pampanga and Taguig City University, as well as those from Barangay 84, Pasay City, where else? New Sinai School and colleges po. The PGH Dietary Family, maraming salamat po sa pag-subaybay. PUP Manila. We also have SPMC, the Southern Philippines Medical Center Emergency Room, Emergency Department, PEDIA Resuscitation Unit. Thank you. LCUP from Malolos, Bulacan. BSU, BSND, I'm not sure kung ano po yung if it's sa Baguio po siya. But thank you po. From UP Los Baños, thank you rin. Acelina School Incorporated. We have those from Cebu, from the Philippine General Hospital, obviously from Medical Records Division and OPD Admitting Section. From the province of Rizal, maraming salamat po. From Antipolo, also in the call, sino pa po ba? From SNLERIED, from the Lung Center of the Philippines. From the House of Representatives in Quezon City, thank you so much. BSU po pala, Benguet State University, thank you. Maasin City, the Neonatal ICU in the Philippine General Hospital, and also the Department of Education, Health and Nutrition Unit, and from Region 1 Medical Center. So thank you. Maraming salamat po for our second question. Our second question reads, the best intervention opportunity for food security involves addressing isa lang po ang kasagutan po dito, no? Option 1 is food affordability. Option 2, food utilization. Option 3, food access. Option 4, food stability. And option 5, food availability. So mapapansin nyo po, medyo naputol po siya dito sa dulo. But hopefully that's still visible sa mga gusto pong mag-join at sumagot po. And I'm seeing medyo distributed po talaga ang kanilang mga kasagutan. Internationally, we are being viewed from Chonin Hospital, Taipei City in Taiwan, from Kanto City in Vietnam, from Dammam, Saudi Arabia, and also University of Al. I also saw one from Saudi Arabia po, and from Adelaide, Australia, and as well as from North Carolina, from the United States. Medyo na po ito, lagpas hating gabi na po. Maraming salamat pa rin. And then from Ozone Med Wellness Clinic, which is in Quezon City. So thank you so much. We won't be closing po muna ang ating fun quiz. I know marami pa po ang gustong sumali sa ating quiz for today as we move on to our webinar proper. Dr. Susie?
Yeah, thank you so much, Raymond, and thank you to everyone for participating in the fun quiz. Now, parang it's a way to remember kung talagang may natutunan ba kayo o wala. I think marami kayong matututunan ngayon. Magaling po mga speaker natin, and we're gonna start off with one of the most well-known nutritionists in the Philippines. I've known of her work because she used to be in charge of the Philippine National Nutrition Surveys. So lahat po yung mga datos nakikita natin tungkol sa nutrition ay namumuno po siya ng nung pananaliksik, the research on this. She is Adjunct Associate Professor at the UPLB Institute of Human Nutrition and Food, and she will talk about the overall problem of malnutrition in the country, and we'll discuss also, why we have to think about the whole food system and ano magagawa natin ng mga frontliners. Okay, so let us warmly welcome our first expert for today, Dr. Cecilia Cristina S. Acuin. Ces Acuin. Welcome, Ces.
Magandang tanghali, Susie, at magandang tanghali, magandang araw, magandang gabi sa lahat ng mga sumali sa atin ngayong araw. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagsali dito sa webinar na ito.
Sige, go ahead, Ces.
Okay. So, maraming salamat din sa TVUP for inviting me to talk about something that's of course very close to my heart, having worked in nutrition for quite some time now. Without further ado, because I want to share a lot of things, I'm going to start my presentation. So my task for this session is to provide the big picture. No? So yung mga detalye ng paano ko ba lulutuin si ganito o anong pipiliin ko sa pamimili ko, mamaya na yon pag yung ating mga reactors will join us. No? So sa akin, para makita natin ano ba yung landscape, ano ba yung pinanggagalingan ng ating mga problema. At yan ang ating tatalakayin in terms of nutrition and food systems, and with a focus on the first 1,000 days, because as Susie has mentioned, this is actually one of the most crucial periods in human development, and so we'd like to bring up, or we'd like to really focus on that particular stage in life. So I saw this about 2 or 3 days ago on the news, and we have a big problem when a kilo of onions costs about the same as a kilo of meat. So that one onion costs more than your Jollibee meal. No? So makikita nyo yan, actual weighing yan na pinakita sa 24 oras. Bakit tayo may ganito? Well, alam nyo naman na we are in the midst of an inflation surge. I hope naintindihan po natin lahat kung anong ibig sabihin ng inflation. Yan po ay ang pagsukat ng mga presyo dito sa ating bansa at kung gaano kalaki ang pinagbabago ng mga presyong ito. So minomonitor yan ng Philippine Statistics Authority. And as you can see from the graph, we are approaching very high rates of inflation. And this is being driven by mostly transport costs. Alam niyo naman na because of the war in Ukraine, na ang ating mga oil prices ay tumataas. But this is equally contributed to, this rate of inflation is equally contributed to by food and beverages as well as tobacco. Ngayon yung alcoholic beverages and tobacco, alam natin yan mandated by law, no? Na tumataas yan kasi may porsyento na pumupunta niyan sa health, at para ma-discourage ang pag-consume nitong mga bagay na ito na hindi nakakabuti para sa kalusugan. But food is absolutely essential. And when food is contributing this much to inflation, you know that we have a problem, a big problem. Now, you may be thinking, pero sandali lang naman to, di ba? At saka, hopefully naman with all of the things that are going on, that things will not get worse. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that we are actually not even at the height or the peak of inflation rates in our country. So this is the time trend in terms of inflation for the country. And if you will notice, so yan yung blue line, no? The green and red are changes over time. So you will note that there were peaks of inflation as much as 30 to 40 and up even 50% rates during the time, alam niyo na siguro yan, nung early 1970s, nung tayo ay simula ng martial law, and in the mid-1980s, when Ninoy Aquino died, and we had a change in government shortly thereafter because of people power. So you will notice that inflation goes up when there is instability. And that is actually one of the things that the government is very much concerned about. It's a flag about what's happening in the country. So hindi lang sa nararamdaman natin na tumataas ang presyo, pero meron ding ibang kalakip na problema na kasama nito. Hindi tayo nag-iisa, alam naman natin yan. As I mentioned earlier, the war in Ukraine has affected these oil prices. So you can see in this graph, the food, that's the green line, the fuel, that's the blue line, and fertilizer price indices. So fertilizer is the orange line, and the gray bars are GDP growth. No, that's the economic growth of low and middle income countries kung saan tayo nakasali. So makikita ninyo yung akyat baba ng iba't iba ng food, fuel and fertilizer price indices over time. So from year 2000 to year 2022. And as you can see, there were 2 previous periods kung saan tumaas din, very close to where we are right now, ang presyo ng food, fuel, and fertilizer. This was during the period of 2007 to 2008 na I'm sure naalala nyo yan, buhay na tayong lahat dyan. Nung biglang tumaas ang presyo ng bigas. Naalala nyo yan? Panahon yan ni President GMA. That was one of the food crisis of recent times, and a similar rise in 2011 to 2012. And if you will look at the trends, we are very close to where those 2 peaks are. So you might say, bumaba naman pala so bakit tayo mag-worry? Kasi kung maalala din ninyo yung panahon na yan, yan din yung panahon na nagkaroon ng mga food price riots. Not here in the Philippines, but in other countries. I think in Indonesia, not sure if they had a riot, but they certainly had some political unrest at the time. And in 2011, around that time then, yung Arab Spring, where the rise in prices triggered the uprising of different countries in the Middle East, and some governments were overthrown at that time. So there is reason for governments to be afraid of this spiraling costs of food, fuel, and fertilizer. We know that we need the fertilizer for agricultural inputs, and the food prices here reflects mostly staples. No? So yun yung pinakamahalagang pagkain kasi anywhere. And in fact, it is these staples that are being closely watched by all governments. And I'm showing you here the main staples of the world. So you have wheat, you have maize, you have soybeans, and you have rice. Kung mapapansin nyo, lahat sila tumataas except rice. And economists feel that it is only rice that is keeping the populations still not at riot point. Kasi rice feeds half of the developing world. Kaya for as long as hindi nakikipagsabayan ang rice sa presyo ng iba, medyo hindi pa masyadong magulo. Yes, we feel the pain, but it's not yet at riot level, let me put it that way, or at the point where people are likely to resort to violent means because of this instability in prices. So that's the number one rule actually that governments learned from the earlier food crisis of 2007 and 2011, that they have to keep staples accessible. So hindi lang basta yung presyo ay mababa, pero merong access ang mga tao. Kasi pwedeng mababa nga ang presyo, pero kung hindi naman siya available or hindi naman siya makakarating sa mga nangangailangan, then people will still go hungry. So it is important that staples are kept accessible. Now, throughout my talk, we're going to be using these terms on nutrition security and food security. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page, because I'm not sure that you're all with the same nutrition background as some of the members of our audience that I know, this is the definition of food security that the UN uses. And when you think about nutrition security, it is really just this definition, food security, with an emphasis on quality. Kasi alam naman natin na importante sa nutrition, hindi lang ang quantity, kung hindi pati ang quality. Kaya nandiyan yan sa definition na yan. And for nutritionists, just like people in other areas of health, or other sectors of health, we have some mnemonics to tell us about how we are doing in terms of food security. So these are some of the measures that are being used: availability, affordability, accessibility, utilizability, and sustainability. So we will be discussing these terms over the next 20 minutes or so. Now, we cannot talk about food security without talking about food systems. Kasi syempre, dito nanggagaling ang ating pagkain. Now, I know that most of us come from the health sector, and we are really more concerned about this part of the system, the consumption side. So yung behaviors ng consumers natin, what foods they choose to eat, because these impact on health and nutrition outcomes. But it is equally important for us, even if we are not on the production side, to be aware of these connections that we have to our food supply, to the food environment, and to the context in which our individual patients, or even ourselves and the people around us connect, and how we all connect through food. Importante kasi yan dahil hindi natin masusolusyonan ang mga problema dito sa right side ng food system without understanding what is happening on the left and on the middle parts of this system. I've already shown you how food prices interact with political stability, and how these prices are affected by events that are happening outside of the food system, like the Ukraine war, for example, diba? So, importante din yan dahil tayo mismo, meron tayong sariling accountability as actors and parts of the food system. Alam nyo rin yan na, we're all consumers, and as health professionals, we model our behaviors. Ang mga pasyente natin, hindi lang naman yung reseta natin ang tinitingnan. Tinitingnan din nila ang sarili nating kilos. How do we choose our foods? When they see you ordering fast foods for your lunch in your clinic, then of course they get the impression that that's acceptable behavior. That's going to be healthy. That's a healthy choice kasi my doctor does it, or my nutritionist does it. So importante na mag-model din tayo ng appropriate behavior for our patients. Now, for those of you who may feel that this is very strange, or this is very new, if you remember, and those of you who are closer to my age will remember this UNICEF model of the conceptual framework for malnutrition in children. This was developed in the 1990s, and it has become a model for all other frameworks that are used to interrelate the different factors causing malnutrition. So if you remember this particular framework, and you just flip it to its side, and then expand the bottom part of the framework, you will see that that's how we wound up with the food system framework that I'm showing here. So why do we want to appreciate this connectedness? Kasi yung ginagawa natin, hindi lang sa pagpili ng pagkain, meron ding impact on other parts of this food system. So halimbawa, I don't know if you've shopped at H&M. Alam niyo, that's a clothing store, and H&M actually has a discount offer if you bring in a bag of clothing material, whether it's old or it's new or whatever, but you just want it recycled. They are going to give you a 15% discount voucher for every medium-sized grocery bag of clothing material that you turn in. O, diba? malaking ano yon, malaking incentive yon. Now, why are they doing this and why is this important to us when we're talking about food? Because what they do there is they recycle those clothing materials into thread and then they make new fabric out of them. Why is this important to us in food? Because that can help decrease the inputs to cotton manufacturing, to cotton plants, and the land and water that can be used for growing the cotton plant can now be used for something edible. Diba? So those choices that we make as consumers or as actors in a system have an impact or can affect the other parts of the system. So I think that's one of the most compelling reasons for us to be aware of all of these actions that are happening outside of our main sphere of influence, which is, of course, consumer behavior and health and nutrition. Now, if you then go deeper into the food system and now convert this into what's called a food value chain. So ito yung mga steps na dinadaanan ng pagkain bago siya makarating sa atin for consumption. So it's called a value chain because in every step there is value added. And what I'm showing here is not just the value added, but the nutrition added. So if you look at the boxes on top of the colored boxes in the middle are the steps that the food goes through, and the boxes on top are points of entry for nutrition in the value chain, and the boxes below those colored boxes are the points of exit for nutrition in the value chain. So syempre, since we want to maximize nutrition, what we want is to increase or enhance what is happening on the boxes on top and to minimize the opportunities for nutrition to exit the value chain, which are the boxes below. Now, we won't have time to tackle each and every box. I'm hoping that maybe I can tackle a few. We'll see how far we can go. Susie will stop me if I'm taking too long. But it's important that we see every step actually has opportunities for nutrition. And it is really up to us, depending on where we are in the food system, on how we can contribute to maximizing or optimizing nutrition at every step in this value chain. So let's go to the bottom line. So Susie mentioned some data on our stunting prevalence, which is very high for the development stage that we are in. But relative to the topic on food security that is the focus of my talk here, let me talk to you about whether we are food secure as a people. I'm sharing with you here a graph that was developed by the Food and Nutrition Research Institute when they conducted their rapid nutrition assessment survey at the height of the pandemic in 2020. So the percentage, the bars here represent the percentage of food insecure households that were covered by the survey. And the risk areas here are pre-survey determinations of whether the site where the survey was conducted was low risk for COVID or moderate risk or high risk. And you can look at their website for the details on those categories. The blue bars reflect the pre-pandemic proportion of households that are food insecure, and the red bars reflect the mid-pandemic, I'm going to call it mid because this was conducted in late 2020, the mid-pandemic proportion of food security or food insecure households. And then for your reference, I included the national averages of food insecurity in previous years. So 2015, 2018, and 2019. So without a doubt, there was a significant increase in food insecurity during the pandemic. And mind you, this was before the Ukraine war. So this was before all of these inflationary effects on our food supply. So I'm a little worried. Right now, FNRI is conducting their 2022 survey. I'm very worried about what the 2022 survey is going to tell us about food insecurity. I'm sure you're familiar with the hunger survey of the Social Weather Station, and that is also reaching record levels of hunger. Now, in 2020 also, the Philippine Association of Nutrition, together with the Zwillig Family Foundation, conducted an assessment of 3 of the Zwillig Family Foundation's project sites, and we looked at their food systems. So I'm sharing here with you food prices before and during the pandemic. So the graph on your left, that's chicken egg. The graph in the middle is galunggong, and the graph on the right is saging, lakatan, latundan, and saba, bananas. We also looked at other food items, and we can tell you that this was 2020, mind you, not even 2021 or 2022. So wala pa yung gera ng Ukraine nung time na yon. During the 2020 part of the pandemic, we were already experiencing an increase in food prices, largely because of the effects of the lockdowns. Because there were, at that time, we had an economic slowdown. If you remember, a very big drop in our GDP at that time because economic activity stopped, and that pushed up not just rice, but the food prices in general, even if food production continued. So you had food available, but they could not reach people, especially those in the urban areas, because there was no way to access those foods. Now, even before the pandemic, I mentioned this, that Susie mentioned this, the average Filipino household was already spending about 50% of its income on food. This comes from a Bangko Sentral survey of 2018. And I can just imagine how much more they are spending now. So we are not in a good place as far as food security is concerned. This graph of our country comes from the World Food Program study on field and nutrient gap, and this was also conducted pre-pandemic 2018. These are the most recent figures available because even research was compromised by the pandemic. So what this graph shows is the proportion of households who cannot afford a nutritious diet. Now, the thresholds, kaya namin inano yung 250 pesos was because of the minimum wage, no? So kalahati nun, kung 50% ang ginagastos sa pagkain, so 250 yon. In 2018, the cost of meeting of having a nutritious diet for a household to was 206 pesos per day. And to meet an energy sufficient diet, so energy lang, but the other nutrients might not be sufficient, 108 pesos at that time. And even at those prices, diba, masasabi nyo, tayong mga taga-NCR will consider this quite cheap. Pero even at those prices, you will see how high the proportions of households are unable to meet a nutritious diet, especially in the Visayas and in Mindanao. So this was the state of our country already, even before the pandemic. Does it matter to nutrition? Of course it does. Alam naman natin yun. Pag we need food for nutrition, and we need good food for good nutrition, and we need good nutrition for good health. Based on that study on what proportion of households are unable to afford a nutritious diet, this was plotted against the percent of stunting in children under 5. And you can see here that there is a significant trend as the proportion of non-affordability increases, then the proportion of stunting also increases, with now BARM, having the highest rates of both, and NCR and Calabarzon towards the lower end of that slope. So yes, it does matter. And if we want to address stunting, this is one of the things that we need to address in our health and nutrition programs. Now, this is not unique to the Philippines. In 2007-2008, Indonesia, as you may remember from the news, had a very severe food crisis, and their findings, a study was done, and they found that those food prices had a significant and negative impact on child growth, especially for households that did not produce food for home consumption. So kanina may nakita akong comment or question about producing your own food. So yes, it does matter. If you do not produce food, then you are already borderline in terms of your income situation. Your children might be at risk for negative child growth. And these were the strategies that were described in that study that households adopted in order to deal with that food crisis. So I'm not going to read them one by one or discuss them one by one, but I can tell you that in that survey that we conducted with the Zwillig Family Foundation, I'm saying we because I am a member of the Philippine Association of Nutrition team that conducted that study during the middle of the pandemic, I can tell you that these are the same strategies that Filipino households were adopting during the pandemic. And this was, as I will repeat, pre-Ukraine war pa. So bago pa nagkaroon ng inflation, ganito na yung sitwasyon natin. What can we do? Well, this month is a breastfeeding month, and it really will help tremendously if mothers will breastfeed. So this shows you the daily cost of a nutritious diet for a child who is 12 to 23 months of age. And if that child is being optimally breastfed, that means that the requirements for food are also some of the requirements, not food, but for nutrients are being met by breastfeeding, then the household needs to spend only about 11 pesos for the complementary feeding of that particular child. If the mother, however, is only breastfeeding suboptimally at a rate of about 50% of optimum, then the cost increases by 3 pesos to 14 pesos. This is 2018 figures. And if the mother stopped breastfeeding altogether, then the cost increases by about 6 pesos. Now, you might say, naku, 6 pesos lang pala eh. Pero kung ang kinikita nila ay 200 pesos a day or 300 pesos a day, and they have to spend for all other needs of the household, malaking bagay yung 6 pesos for something that is almost free. Breastfeeding is not completely free, but it's almost free for these people. So I think that this is one of the things that we as health professionals can definitely promote to mothers who have children of this age, and especially if they are in the 12 to 23 months of age, because we know that breastfeeding doesn't just provide nutrients, it also provides protection from illness. Now, let me shift to the needs of women. And I bring this up because, of course, in the first 1,000 days, pregnant women are part of the focus for nutrition. And one of the things that was found during the study of the World Food Program on the cost of nutritious diets is that 60% of the household food cost actually comes from either the pregnant or the lactating woman and the girl or the female of adolescent age. So they have the highest requirements because of the iron needs. Na mahalang iron in food form, kasi alam nyo naman, the best forms or the best forms of iron come from animal food sources. And if you will look at these requirements, ang tataas ng requirements pag ng woman of reproductive age as well, lalo na pag nasa reproductive age group. Adolescent age group. And it becomes worse when the adolescent female gets pregnant because this 62 milligram requirement shoots up even further. But take note also of the iron needs of the infant because they are not unsubstantial. Mataas din ang iron needs ng infant. And for the breastfeeding infant, that is optimally obtained from breast milk, especially if the mother is iron replete herself. And if the child is of complementary feeding age, then the child needs to meet some of that iron requirements from a good complementary feeding diet. So I'm hoping that Emmy and Ria might address that food part because I don't have time to cover that. So we mentioned earlier that producing your own food helps. So this part of the study was conducted in the rural ARMM region, and the cost of a nutritious diet for the household decreases by about 20 pesos when you produce part of your food yourself. So meron ganitong klaseng, so about 10% I would guess, if your ballpark is about 200 pesos, about 10% of your food costs can be reduced if you just produce part of the food yourself. If you produce an iron source, that will increase because, as I said, iron is in the diet is quite expensive. Now, if you produce more than that, so beyond your own family needs or your household needs, then you can actually reduce the cost of a nutritious diet to almost zero. So this graph shows you the percent of households who cannot meet a nutritious diet. So that's on average about 37%. If they produce their own food, this goes down to 30%. If they produce more than what they need and they can sell the excess at farm gate prices, so meaning dun lang sa roadside, no, or sa harap ng kanilang bahay, kaya na nilang ibenta, mangangalahati o higit pa sa kalahati ang nababawas in terms of the households who are unable to meet a nutritious diet. And if they are able to sell it at market prices, meaning pwede nilang taasan yung kanilang tubo, then none of the households will be unable to meet the cost of a nutritious diet. So may impact talaga ang ginagawa ng Department of Agriculture. But we do need to ensure that interventions are put in place for those who need it most. So I'm not going to go into that. Maybe during the question and answer, you can ask me about that. But pwede talaga, pwede that all households can afford a nutritious diet given these kinds of strategies. Now you might say, paano naman yung nasa urban area? na walang lupa, walang paraan para magtanim ng marami. Totoo, urban households are a big challenge in terms of meeting their food security for all of these reasons that I cannot go into at the moment. And they are very dependent on cash for food purchases. Kaya ito ang mga households na kailangang may ayuda. Kailangan talaga during the time of high need or during this time of very high inflation, there has to be some form of assistance. It can be in cash or it can be in the form of reducing access barriers to nutritious foods. No? So yung mga kadiwa centers or yung mga kadiwa markets ng DA that seeks to bring fresh produce to urban communities to reduce the transaction costs for the producers and the access costs to the consumers, malaki ang nagagawa niyan. So if you have a kadiwa center near your place, please patronize them so that they can continue with this initiative that seeks to bring food, that seeks to reduce the barriers between production and consumption. So I'd like to summarize that discussion of the food production issues that surround food insecurity into these two basic strategies, and I owe this to Howdy Bowie. He says that there are really just two basic strategies we need. One is to increase the density of nutrients per food item, and the best way to do that is through food staples. And again, we can discuss these details later. And the other is to increase the quantity of non-staple foods. So makikita nyo dito yung mga non-staple foods na yan. Quite a number of them can actually be produced even in urban settings, but it does need some cooperation, and it does need some assistance from government to enable this. So we can discuss that later also. So is the Filipino food secure? Sinabi ko sa inyo, mukhang hindi. Are we consuming a healthy diet? So this is a graph, or actually two graphs, but they are telling the same story from different perspectives. The blue line here is the grams of food consumed on average. This comes from the National Nutrition Surveys over the years. And the red lines refer to the calories for consumed during average calories consumed this is at the individual level. So individual level ito, no? And then the blue line sa baba, the graph there, is just the kilocalorie per gram. So just as a measure of the calorie density of the food, so I just divided the kcal, that's the red line, divided by the dark blue line, and that produces the light blue line at the bottom. So what does this tell you? Around 1993, between 1993 to 2003, there was a dramatic increase in the calorie density of the foods we are eating. So, kasi yung iba sinasabi sa akin, if there is so much food insecurity, why are we fat? No? Kasi yung klase ng pagkain na kinakain natin ngayon ay mas mataas ang calorie density. So saan ba ito nanggagaling? So tiningnan natin yung iba-ibang food groups that we consume. The top graphs here are for cereals and starchy roots and tubers. The middle ones are for the protein sources, and the bottom ones are fruits and vegetables. And I will shortcut the discussion and tell you that it is not the cereals, which have remained about the same. It is not the starchy roots, kasi bumaba pa nga ang consumption natin yan. Even the sugars, medyo bumaba din ang consumption natin, at least up to 2018. And our fruit consumption has drastically declined talaga. And this is a big cause for concern because of the need for micronutrients. There is some increase in vegetables over time, but not enough to make up for the drastic reduction in the other sources of micronutrients. Where we have increased in our consumption is actually eggs. So that's the orange line in the bodybuilding foods left graph, and in meat products, that's the one on the right. And to some extent, poultry, that's the gray line on the right also. So it is our protein foods that are increasing. That is reflective of also improvements in our income. So it is something that we've known in nutrition for some time. When people start earning more, they tend to shift their diets towards more protein-rich foods. And in this case, however, together with the protein comes the increase in processed foods. Kasi karamihan itong meat products that we consume are being consumed in the form of processed foods. So it is that increase in the consumption of processed foods that we think is responsible for the increase in calorie density of the foods we are consuming. Kasi yung timing niya, nag-coincide doon sa increase in calorie density that I was describing earlier. So doon ang gagaling itong calorie density diets natin. So if you want to change to a healthier diet, that's probably where you'd like to focus on. But when you think about it, how much choice do people really have? So this is the access issue that I was telling you about. And in 2016, when I was still in FNRI, we conducted food environment studies in selected LGUs. And I'm sharing with you the studies from Pulilan. Now, we knew that nationwide, 90% of all foods consumed are bought, whether it's in urban or in rural communities. Pero mas mataas syempre ang proportion kapag nasa urban community. Now, Pulilan is a peri-urban town, as you know. So the graph on top shows you all of those red dots there are food stores or where they can buy food. So iba-ibang klase yan. Karamihan ng mga food establishments where you can buy food in Pulilan are sari-sari stores. So there were almost 2,000 such food stores. About 80% or 85% of them were sari-sari stores. And in the graph at the bottom, you can see what can be bought in food stores in Pulilan. The highest proportions that you see, so that's the brown, the pink, and the, I guess, light blue bars that you see there, are all processed foods. That's 74.4% mga chips or chichirya, 71% soft drinks, and 46.7% alcohol or liquor. Those were the top 3 items that could be bought in food stores in Pulilan. And you have 40.6% selling processed meats, so yan yung mga hot dogs. Only 32%, or about a third, were actually selling fresh produce, and this was in the form of rice. And you have 23% also selling some form of fish, but most of these were dried fish. So kahit may pera ka, o kahit affordable yung pagkain, kung ganito yung food na pinaka-accessible sa'yo, di syempre, ito yung kakainin mo. So really, the solution is not just to bring down prices, but to make healthy foods accessible to people. So what is government doing? So this is the impact of government interventions on the cost of a nutritious diet. So going back to that earlier study that we've been discussing from the World Food Program. So in this analysis naman, 35% of households are unable to meet a nutritious diet. But if they are recipients of the cash transfer program of the government, yung sinasabi nilang 4 Ps, then that figure is reduced to 22%. So that's a dramatic decline in the inability to afford a nutritious diet. And if a household is a beneficiary of what we call the Philippine Plan of Action for Nutrition Interventions, and those are in the table on the upper part of the graph, then that the proportion of households is further reduced to 21%. And if they are recipients of both the PPAN interventions and the 4Ps, that declines further to just 7%. So may impact talaga. If we want to make diets more affordable and nutritious, it is probably not enough to just change individual behaviors or even household behaviors. We need to support food access, and we need to support households through these different multi-sectoral channels in order to make good food or nutritious food available to people. Now, this is my last point. I hope I have time, Susie. Are we consuming sustainable diets? So this is a rice grain. And as you can see, different parts of the rice grain here. The germ, which comprises about 1 to 2% of the rice grain by weight, and that is embedded in the rice kernel. That's the main part of the rice. That's the white part of the rice, that's 70%. And then you have a coating of rice bran, which is 8 to 9% by weight, and the rice hull, which is 20% by weight. Now the hull, that is what is removed when you mill the rice. Diba? So a first pass of milling breaks the hull, removes it. That's unedible, but it's used for other industrial uses, and it's used for carbonized rice hull, which is used for other farming uses. But then, because of our preference for white rice, millers will do a second pass of that pangalawang milling ang gagawin nila para matanggal yung rice bran. So that removes 8 to 9% further in the weight of the rice grain. But note that that is where almost all the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants of rice are lodged in your rice bran. So you are actually removing the most nutritious part of rice and feeding it to the pigs and the chickens, and also I learned recently also fish. So kita nyo naman, ang tumataba ang baboy, hindi ang tao, kasi yung mga nutrients napupunta sa baboy. Well, think about it from this perspective. In 2020, our rice production was about 20 million metric tons. And at the time, our projected rice imports were about 2 million metric tons, or 10%. And because we lose so much due to inefficiencies in milling, we are only able to recover 50 to 65% of the rice grain after milling. So if we can improve the efficiencies, and if we can improve the processes by which we mill, and if we consume mostly brown rice, we can reduce our imports of rice to almost zero. So your choice of consuming brown rice can make a difference, not just to your health, but to our country's economy as well. So think about that next time you go out to buy rice. Now, this is, I think, my last slide. So parang summary na to, no? In 2018, there was a global advocacy to move more towards sustainable consumption, because it was becoming obvious that the way we were consuming food and other materials from the earth was not sustainable for future generations. And the call was for shifting more towards plant-based foods. So there was a big push towards vegetarianism. But since that time, there has been a more, I guess, moderated approach to this. And instead of pushing for vegetarian consumption, the move is now towards what they call flexitarian. So flexitarian is may konti kang flexibility. So pwede ka pa rin kumain ng meat, pero baka once or twice a week na lang, so that you can shift towards more sustainable consumption. No? You might say, kulang na nga tayo sa pagkain, pag-uusapan pa natin ito. But there are ways by which we can modify our consumption even during this time of food insecurity. So we shift towards a more sustainable diet for not just for ourselves, but also for our planet. So on the right side, I'm showing you the per capita food intake based on our 2018 National Nutrition Surveys. The black text here are our average consumption, and the blue text is how we can achieve a more sustainable diet even during this time. So I don't have time, I think, to go into these details, but essentially it is going to really increase plant-sourced foods, which is good because they're cheaper, so that they replace most of our protein sources, and to reduce the intake of processed foods. So yun yung essential shifts that we need to make in our diet. It brings together all of the principles that I've been discussing earlier, and I hope we can discuss more later. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you to the people who have helped me put together this presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. My goodness, ang galing naman ni Ises. Ang ganda ng presentation mo. It's all done. Art, we haven't had a presentation on nutrition yet. And I think, me personally, I was taking a lot of pictures, and I'm gonna go back and listen to the presentation again. Ang dami po nating matututunan, mapupulot na mga na impormasyon kung bakit pala ganon. Ganon yung, at mataas ang presyo ng pagkain ngayon. So we're going to proceed with our next two reactors. Ces will be joining us, I think, by phone in a bit to answer some of your questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. And Ces, you should look at all the comments, no? Na-appreciate talaga ng audience natin.
Magaling.
Grabe, no? Grabe, Raymond. Sige, okay, Raymond, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Susie. Thank you, Dr. Acuin. As mentioned, we haven't had a nutrition presentation, so very much in line with the times, especially, and also with the fact na it's something that would really be appreciated given the practical tips and how to understand po our current situation. Really, it's ano po ba yung relevance of providing nutritious meals for our families, especially sa mga bata, for the first 1,000 days. I don't think that gets enough airtime, if you will. So, buti na lang po, that's something that you focus, Dr. Acuin. For our next two reactors for today, our first speaker po is, they may be new to the webinar, but she is no stranger to us. She is the head of the dietary service po of the Philippine General Hospital. Please welcome to your screens, Miss Emelita Lavilla. Ma'am Emmy.
Good afternoon, good evening, good day to everyone. I'd like to thank TVUP for inviting me here. I'd also like to thank my dietary family for all the support, and of course the dietary bebes for responding to my prompts when I asked for the PowerPoint presentation, which I would be sharing later on. So as what Dr. Acuin have said, inflation have gone so bad. Imagine the kilo of onion is almost as costly as the price of the beef, no? And I learned a lot from her presentation. So that's the rationale of having the high cost of food, and the reason why food is not that accessible to us. So the practical tips which I can give and responding to the question to this webinar, kasya ba ang 250 pesos to prepare a nutritious and delicious and palatable meal for the family? Ang sagot ko po, yes, pwedeng-pwede, kayang-kaya po. And I would like to share with you, DOST, Food and Nutrition Research Institute, have made initiatives, no, to come up with recipes, and they have made some research on how to respond to the difficult times that we experience right now. They have published the 2022 Menu Guide Calendar, which is titled Nutrition Meals for Healthier Families in the New Normal. So with these recipes po na present ng FNRI, they made use of alternative protein sources. So we would find recipes which made use of tokwa, munggo, tinapa, dilis, root crops, leafy and green vegetables po. So yung mga recipes which they presented cost around 44 pesos to 150 pesos. And the recipe is good for 5 people. If you take a look into the calories and nutrient contribution of these recipes, you would find po na they are able to supply the necessary energy needed by the adults and the children, pati din po yung mga essential nutrients like calcium, iron, mga vitamin A din po. So if I may share, meron pong mga tweaks na ginagawa, like yung chicken nuggets. If we buy that sa grocery po, ang isang pack would cost you around 200 pesos. Pero yung modification, which was done by FNRI at sinishare po nila, the chicken nuggets have been modified into chicken veggie nuggets. Other recipes po na may mga tweaks, kung mahilig po sa chicken curry or beef curry, they introduced yung mongo curry po, no? So meron itong mapaprovide na the same amount of protein na kailangan natin per serving. That would give you around 8 grams of protein per serving. Tapos nasa 120 calories, and the recipe would only cost about 120 pesos. And that's good for 5 people. Kung mahilig sa mechado, yung mga pork mechado or beef mechado, meron din pong pwedeng i-offer na tokwa mechado. So, yun po yung mga ibang alternative na pwedeng ibigay. So as nutritionists, we normally tell our clients, no, pag translate po natin yung how do we do it, how do we solve it, no? Kasi po ang mga nutritionist-dietitians, the BDO, we find ways on how we meet the caloric requirement, how we meet the nutrient requirements within the budget and with what is available. So if I may suggest, meron po akong mnemonics na gusto i-share. SET. S stands for scanning the environment. What do you have? Ano po yung available? Ano yung kayang bilhin? Kagaya nga ng as what Dr. Acuin has mentioned, where do these people buy their food items? From the ordinary sari-sari store? What are the available vegetables in the environment? Meron bang puno ng malunggay? Meron bang mga backyard gardening na ginawan wherein these vegetables can be integrated dun sa food items po. And we also teach that there are options po. While lettuce and broccoli are nutritious, but it may not be affordable for the families. So we introduce other vegetables na hindi pwedeng hindi familiar or hindi ganun kagusto, but it is as nutritious as these other items are, like kangkong. Pag kinumpare po kasi, ang isang tali ng kangkong would only cost about 30 pesos. So yun po yung scanning the environment na sinasabi namin. Sayote, squash, these are alternatives po, and these are very nutritious food items na pwedeng i-augment sa diet. So it's important that you know what you have, you know the available food items that you can use of. So ang next letter po is E. laging sinasabi, papunta tayo sa exciting part. So the exciting part of planning the menu, preparing the menu is you have to be excited to plan the menu for the family. We don't get this, we as frontliners, as nutritionists, we try to influence the people in the community, the patients, the watchers, on how they can prepare the food from what is available. So kung 250 yung budget, of course, we cannot focus on buying beef kasi nasa 350 ang cost nun, or yung hindi buong chicken kasi yung isang buong chicken or 1 kilo of chicken nasa 170 yon. So konti na lang yung matitira sa budget. But we could augment like combined chicken with tofu. Yun po yung mga alternative na sinasabi namin. Be excited in thinking of food items and recipes that would be the favorite or yung mga favorite po ng ating mga family members. And then try and test yung mga recipes po. So as I've mentioned, may mga recipes na sinishare ang FNRI. You can try that. Then I'd like to share with you because we did some trial and testing and teaching our patients and our watchers on what was available. Kasi during the time of pandemic, we are familiar po with the ayuda. So yung laman ng ayuda, usually po puro mga sardinas, corned beef, noodles. So of course, majority of the patients naglalabas ng kanilang mga sentiment sa amin, sa mga nutritionist-dietitians. Ano bang paggagawin sa sardinas na yan? Ano bang naha-high blood na sila sa kakakain ng mga sardinas at saka ng mga corned beef at saka yung mga packed noodles. And as mentioned by Dr. Ces Acuin, talaga namang nagko-contribute ito sa pagbigat ng mga individuals, yung mga processed foods. As nutritionist, hindi po namin ina-advise yung mga canned goods na to, itong mga instant noodles na to because of the high sodium. Pero anong gagawin kung ito yung available at ito yung binigay na ayuda? So here at the dietary department, we conducted a cooking lecture last nutrition month, and we tried some modifications on how this ayuda can be converted into delicious and nutritious meals. So share ko po. So kanina na-excite na din si Doc Susie dun sa mga pagkaing ayuda because I have shared po yung aming isang na-discover. Yung ordinary sardines can be made into sinigang na sardinas. So, na-appreciate naman po siya nung mga nakatest at nag-try po nung recipe na yon. I'm not sure kung lumalabas po ba yung aking recipe.
No, we can't see it.
We can see it now.
Ems.
We cannot yet.
Oo.
Teka po.
May share, ano ko ba, Ems? Gusto ko yun, sinigang. Gusto ko yata yung sinigang. Nagugutom na yata ako.
Nagulat nga ako sa
students, kumain na ba
First time
kayo?
ko makarinig nun eh.
Oo. But that's right, no? Issue kasi yan eh, yung
True.
puro dilata ang binibigay, ano? So ano pang pwedeng gawin? That's a very good point. Ayan na, may nakikita na kami, Ems.
Your desktop po.
Okay.
Baka you can go to your recipes, ma'am.
Oh, kasi magluluto ako niya.
Ito pa.
Yan, corned beef
Yan.
nilaga. We can see it.
Nilaga. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Okay. Yan. Pasensya na po, tekla kasi ko, hindi ako techie. Okay, so ito po, yung isa sa recipe namin. No? So ito po yung, ay sorry. Yan. So ito po yung ginawa namin last July 15, pagkaing ayuda, gawing mas masarap at masustansya. So
Gawin mong slideshow, Ems. Ems, gawin mong slideshow.
Okay, so that was conducted last July 15 po. So these are some of the recipes. Hindi po namin na i-share yung sinigang na sardinas. No?
Okay, kwento ko na lang.
Anyway,
Kaya ko yan.
but anyway, yung pong sinigang na sardinas, igigisa lang yung normal na sardinas, lalagyan ng tubig, and then haluan nyo na ng mga gulay na pang sinigang kasama ang sili, labanos, kangkong, pati gabi. No? Kasi cheaper po ang root crop na gabi at saka pampasarap.
Hindi madudurog? Hindi madudurog yung sardinas?
Pwede po siyang ahunin muna yung sardinas o kaya naman yung iba naman nagugustuhan na nila na nakadurog na yung sardinas. But para maiwasan, pwedeng habang pinapakulo nyo po yung gabi para lumambot, aalisin nyo muna yung sardinas na naigisa na. Importante kasing maigisa yung sardinas para hindi malansa.
Nice.
Okay. Yan. Tapos yung corned beef po, ginawa namin siyang corned beef na nilaga. So meron siyang patatas, pechay, repolyo, tapos minsan napapadami ang tubig kaya nagdadagdag ng salt and pepper. Pero kung hindi naman masyadong madami yung tubig na nailagay, yung saltiness ng mismong corned beef, okay na po yun. Okay.
Ems, pwede rin isigang yan
Ang corned beef po, pwede. Marami tayong pwedeng gawin sa corned beef. Yung corned beef po, pwede siyang lagyan ng maraming cabbage or yung repolyo. Yon para na-extend siya at saka tumataas yung fiber content. Then, ito inimbento din to ng aking mga bebe endies, no? Yung chicken noodle tinola. So, yung noodles na nakapack, pwedeng lagyan ng itlog, pero nilalagyan din ng luya at saka sayote, kasi mura lang naman ang sayote. So, we increase the fiber intake, we encourage the kids na kumain ng gulay, kasi familiar sila dun sa mga noodles. So yun din po kasi yung isang technique ng mga nutritionist para makapag-introduce ng ibang pagkain for the family. Then, eto po, favorite namin din to, sardines chow fan. Yan. So, naglalagay from the ordinary po na mga binigay na ayuda ng barangay or ng mayor, sasamahan natin ng ibang food items, particularly vegetables na nandun lang naman available, no, sa mga talipapa, sa tiangge, mabilis siyang makuha. Or yung iba, meron ding tanim na sarili ng talbos ng kamote or kangkong, pwede na siyang ibigay. So we just have to be excited sa pag-prepare nito. At saka sabi nga, whenever we cook, dapat masaya ka para yung pinapakain mo, masaya din pag-present. And tuna, arroz, kaldo. Parang nagbaligtad yung aking But it's tuna. Opo.
Okay.
Okay. Last but not the least, i-share ko yung recipe ng dietary department na favorite ng aming mga top officials, yung aming baked macaroni. It's not 100% beef, pero meron po siyang kasamang eggplant or talong. No? So that would lessen the cost of the recipe. That would increase the fiber content. Tapos maganda din yung blend niya kasi hindi masyadong dry yung baked macaroni. And we can teach the children to eat vegetables. When my daughter was young, ayaw niya kumain ng talong. So nilalagay ko siya sa baked macaroni. So hindi niya napapansin na may talong yung kinakain niya. So those are some techniques po or tricks paano magiging nutritious ang mga food items without really costing a lot. So na-stretch po natin yung ating value ng peso. Then we get to be excited and happy sa pag-prepare po ng food. So thank you po.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. That's Emma Lavilla of the PGH dietary section,
service.
no? Oo, dietary service. Parang, I think it's great kasi it's very practical. And ano nga, no, yung pagkaing ayuda, hindi naman kinakailangan gigisahin mo na lang lahat yun at paulit-ulit mong kinakain. I think the beauty of it is pwede nyo talagang dagdagan ng gulay, pwede nyo gawing sinigang, pwede nyo gawing nilaga. So go back, no, panoorin nyo uli yung sa YouTube para makita nyo yung recipe kung mahilig kayo sa recipe. Pero ako naririnig ko lang, alam ko na nang gagawin ko. Mahilig ako magluto eh. May Kenny kasi ako Raymond, like you.
True.
Okay. Raymond, you want to introduce our next speaker?
Okay, our final speaker for today is also our secondary actor. Well, she's an entrepreneur. Although she's new to our webinar, she'll be able to provide po from her perspective ano po yung kailangan po natin matutunan. She's also the owner of Affordable Gourmet. Please welcome to your screens, Miss Ria Balatbat. Ma'am Ria.
Hi po. Good day to everyone. Thank you for having me here. As I mentioned earlier po, I am really hesitant to be part of this kasi I know it's about nutrition and but as mentioned po by Dr. Susie, I will be speaking from another perspective po.
Yes.
Si Doctora po earlier, Dr. says, she mentioned earlier about the thing that leads to food insecurity po. Actually, that also affects us sa business side po. Kasi whatever cost we have, definitely po, it trickles down to our customers. In one way or the other, napapasa po sa kanila. So I take it as my responsibility to lower the food cost as well as utilize whatever it is that we have sa restaurant po, just so we can provide our customers with the best value for their money. People were asking me po, sabi nila, affordable gourmet is an oxymoron. To most people it is because our common knowledge is when it's gourmet, it has to be really pricey. But for me, you can turn something really simple into gourmet. Later on po, I will share with you a few photos kung paano ko ginagawang appetizing and at the same time nutritious yung food na sineserve po namin. Do you have any questions for regarding that, or shall I proceed with...
Go ahead,
Ria. Go ahead, Ria. Okay yan. Gutom na kami. Nakalagay nga dito sa chat, nagugutom na sila eh. Sige, mas maganda. Punta na tayo sa pictures ng mga niluluto niyo.
This one po, this is what we have sa Affordable Gourmet. As you can see, this is part po of our bento meals. They are for delivery and takeout, but then our customers are surprised kasi po that's exactly how they reach them. What you see is what you get. They normally send photos po ng brochure and the way they receive the food, and they are happy po with this one po. You can see na it's blue rice.
Ria, sandali, Ria. Can you go to slideshow para mas malaki? Parang maliit lang nakikita mo. Go to slideshow. Yan. Ayan na ba, Raymond? Hindi pa.
Well, I think it should be okay. Yan, okay.
Yan. Nice. Oh, sige, blue rice. Sorry to interrupt you, Ria. Go ahead. Ay, naku, may blue rice.
Yes
Ang masarap.
po. Blue rice po, that's a signature rice at our restaurant. And initially po, people thought na I'm using food color for that one. But I thought of doing this po to make it unique and healthier po. I used tea po. You're familiar siguro po with the blue turnip or the butterfly tea. That's this one po, the blue flower dun sa ribs sa bandang taas. That's the blue turnip. Madali po siyang i-grow. Actually, mas marami po siyang flowers during the rainy season. And what we do is, apart from using the edible flowers to design our food po, meron din po kaming dehydrated flowers, which we use as tea. I personally consume it. But then, the tea po, part of that is used sa rice namin to give it that color and to add nutritional value po dun sa rice namin. That's how we po. And this po, as I've mentioned earlier, I love plating, and it doesn't really have to be expensive to look really good po or to be nutritious. This one po, Dr. Zuzi, I mentioned earlier about yung okoy po. This one is at 50 pesos. I was able to make 4 plates.
Where is it? Which one is it?
This one po, your left po, the fourth image.
Ayun.
The fourth image towards the middle.
Next to the parang pandesal na
It's the
sandwich,
okoy.
Dr. Susie.
Katabi nung pandis. Naku, Diyos ko.
Yes po.
Sige, tell me about the okoy. Paano mo ginawa yun?
plated it lang po para mukha siyang mahal. But this one po, a plate is just 12 pesos and 50 cents. Mukha lang siyang mahal kasi I plated it nicely. So, with 50 pesos po, yung leftover po na kalabasa namin. Kasi po, if you look po sa bandang middle naman, this one is what we what we call a lechon kare-kare po sa restaurant.
Ay, sarap nun. Teka, nasa na?
Yung nasa bandang gitna po.
Saan ba si lechon kare-kare?
The third icon po, from this one po.
The third,
Ay,
ito.
oh my
You see
gosh.
this one po.
Lechon kare-kare. O,
actually-
sige nga. O, sige. Paano
This
ba
one
yan?
is lechon kare-kare po. Pero but since that's off the menu po, there are times na natitiran kami ng gulay. So, one time, we had an oversupply po ng kalabasa. So, that's when I thought of using it po dito sa okoy para may merienda kami. And at the same time, it's really cheap. And I asked yung family ko, ano sa tingin nyo magkano yung nagastos ko? But then, it's just 50 pesos nga po. 12.50 per serving of this. Bali, 3 peraso na po siya na ganyan. So, this
Teka,
one naman
Ria,
po,
Ria, teka sandali. Paano mong niluluto yan? Yung bang kalabasa, pinakukuluan yon or ginagayat mo ng hilaw? What do you do?
ginigrate po namin ng hilaw siya. Even yung ibang veggies po, yung kunwari, other people would boil it, I usually steam it po to preserve po yung sweetness ng veggies. Kasi pag nasusok po siya sa water, when we boil it, naiiba po yung kulay, yung taste niya. So, sa restaurant po, we steam pag may kailangan po kami na veggies or we grill them po.
Okay, wait, Ria.
For this particular,
before you leave that topic, because I like this kalabasa story. And then, ano siya, parang tinotorta sa itlog. Ganun lang.
Opo. Ganun lang po. Tapos normally po hindi naglalagay ng parsley, but since may supply naman po kami doon para for a little bit of color, tapos medyo may konting taste din po. I use herbs po kasi para magandang Tapos yung dahon po ng sibuyas, para lang i-plate siya ng parang kakaiba lang.
Di ba? Maganda. Sige, punta tayo doon sa lechon kare-kare. Raymond, okay yan.
Diba yung lechon kare-kare lang is, we love lechon naman po. It's not necessarily affordable po, pero kaysa lang po, di ba kunwari po, may handaan kayo and for Filipinos po, we love celebrations. Yung iba gusto talaga is buong lechon, pero ang nangyayari lang normally is lechong paksiw.
Oo nga.
Whereas
Yun lang yung
sa
ginagawa
amin
before.
po, if I have yung extra lechon aside from paksiw, I can turn it into lechon kare-kare. It's nutritious, hindi po nakakasawa. And then nilagang lechon, I also do that. And lechon sisig po. Yun. So, para naiiba-iba po, para at least po, and when you freeze it naman po, para hindi po masira siya, it prolongs yung shelf life po ng food. So, I suggest if you have a celebration at home, tapos may tira po kayo, and of course you're tired, you don't have to do that. Mas magiging creative pa kayo if you allow yourself to rest, and you can leave it a few days po sa freezer, and then think of other options kung paano nyo po siya ma-serve. And this one po, I've also mentioned it earlier po prior to our session. This one po that looks like a stew, it's actually silver skin stew. We serve po kasi grilled pork tenderloin sa restaurant. And if for instance, yung delivery sa amin po is like 40 kilos ng tenderloin, it doesn't mean we can serve we have 40 kilos po na isa-serve, because we still have to take out the silver skin, which is the tougher part po ng tenderloin. And then instead po na itapon siya, kasi with 40 kilos po, aabot ng 4 kilos yung matatanggal namin na silver skin, or even up to 5 kilos. So, i-save ko po siya, and then when I have the time, gagawin ko po siyang stew. So, ayan po, yung mga, it looks expensive lang po kasi may olives, may ganyan, pero actually po is, these are readily available ingredients for us sa restaurant. So, instead na bumili pa ako ng bago, this is what I use po. Tapos yung sinabi po kanina ni Dr. Raymond na ito mukha siyang yung pandesal po, if there are times po, diba, na we're on a budget, pero we are thinking of something na parang special. If you don't have the means po to buy like a lobster sandwich or a lobster roll, and then you can use yung kani po. There are the cheaper version and may expensive po, the Alaskan crab stick. So whatever you have po, kung ano yung mag-fit sa budget nyo, just plate it like this instead of like egg salad or ano, para lang po medyo maiba, tuna, ganun. You can use crab sticks po. It's still cheaper kahit with like malunggay pandesal or wheat pandesal po. It's like giving yourself lang, parang masatisfy mo lang yung cravings mo ng ano po, without going over budget. Ayun po. Tapos, this one po, this is the tofu sisig. It's off the menu. May mga clients lang po kami na nagre-request. You can use yung regular na tokwa, although for me po medyo may parang maasim po siya pag tokwa, but it doesn't necessarily have to be tofu. Nasa inyo po yan, sa budget nyo, kahit ano pong budget, magagawan siya. And mukha po siyang mahal, but a pack of tofu is just 45 to 50 pesos po. And a little bit of mayo, tas mga ganyan, magagawa nyo na po siyang mukhang mahal. So,
diba?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think what Ria is telling us is, apart from you can make affordable meals, you can also make them look really good. Diba? Parang social yung dating.
Yes.
Oo.
That's true,
Ria, may
that's true.
pictures ka pa? Kasi we're running out of time na. May pictures ka pa, Ria?
That's it na po. Those are the ones that I want
thanks
to
a lot.
highlight. But ito po nga sa baba po, this is how we serve the food at the restaurant po. So,
Very
nakaayos din po siya. Tapos yun nga po yung kanina, this one po, pag pack meals, it's how you get them po. And i-share ko lang po, during the start of the pandemic, yung sobrang exhausted yung mga frontliners. We have clients po sending out food. Tapos usually po, di ba yung iba is, they would share, pero we like, ano po yun, commitment ko nung start ng pandemic to work with yung people po who give out to frontliners. May mga nagpapadala po sa PGH. We have one client who sent food po like for 2 months. Tapos nagulat po ako, I got messages po sabi po nung mga frontliners, thank you for making it look this good and taste this good po. Kahit daw po pagod sila, kasi normally po they would receive like tapsilog or ganyan, but it's satisfying and it's a breath of fresh air. Kapag nakakakita sila ng parang gourmet, without them knowing po na limited naman din yung budget ng nagbigay kasi gusto nila i-extend yung support nila. So that's part po of what we do po.
Okay, thank you so much, Ria. And our audience is very, very hungry. Thank you so much for that. And you can see all the hearts and clapping and whatever that's coming your way. So we have Raymond and I post the webinar. Hindi na tayo makakapag-Q&A, no? Kaya hindi na tayo makakapag-closing remarks, pero pwede pa rin tayong sagutin natin yung Raymond, yung fun quiz.
The fun quiz questions. But before that, Dr. Susie, let's have our public service announcement for today.
Sige, go ahead.
O sige na, anak. Parang kagat lang ng langgam. Kantik o yung kumikiliti lang? Ito naman parang hindi ka pa nababakunahan dati. Akala ko pa naman brave girl ka. Nakakahiya na kay Doc.
Okay lang po, nanay. Ay, ang cute naman ng shirt mo. Favorite color ko rin yan.
Doc, favorite ka rin po ang color nito. Pero ayoko po ng red huntik. Masakit kumagat at takot rin po ako sa blood. Magtutugo po ba ako sa bakuna?
Ah, hindi. Walang dugo sa bakuna. Konting pisil lang, tapos na.
Kakasugat ba ako, Doc?
Hindi ka magkakasugat. Lalagyan lang natin ng plaster pagkatapos para safe. Di ba nabakunahan ka na rin ng contra measles at chickenpox dati? Parang ganun lang din ang bakuna para sa COVID-19.
Natatakot pa rin ako, Doc.
Alam mo ang secret sa pagiging brave. Hindi ibig sabihin na wala kang kinatatakutan. Kundi, kahit natatakot ka, hinaharap mo pa rin ito.
Okay. Ready na po ako, Doc.
Una, pupunasan ko muna ng bulak na may alkohol ang braso mo. Okay? Tapos, mabilis lang na konting... Ayos! Tapos!
Tapos na, anak. Pwede mo nang buksan ang mga mata mo.
Nay, sabi sa inyo, brave girl na po ako eh.
O, heto ang prize para sa'yo, ha? Wow! Bagay sa shirt mo. That's the color of bravery.
Color rin yan for love.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Nay. Dahil ako po ay mahal ninyo, nagpabakuna na ako.
Kaya mga bata, magpabakuna na kayo.
Stay safe and stay well. Mga bata, magpasama na sa Bakuna Center. Thank you so much, TVUP. The COVID Communication Public Service Announcement is one of the many creative outputs of the Stop COVID Deaths team to push for pediatric vaccination for children aged 5 to 18. So we hope you will be able to share this video clip with all your social media accounts and stay safe and stay well. Magpasama na po sa Bakuna Center. Thank you so much. We are seeing our fun quiz being flashed on the screen right now. Medyo kalat-kalat po ang...
I think Cez is online.
Yes. Dr. Acuin, I'll read the question and maybe you help us with the answer po. No? Opportunities for frontline health professionals to contribute to better food systems, except, alin po dito yung exception, Dr. Acuin?
Hi, Raymond. Can you hear me?
Yes po, loud and clear, ma'am. Go ahead po.
Okay. Well, the exception there is the strengthening linkages. Actually, it's the weakest answer. Pwede pa rin, pero siya yung pinakamahinang sagot dyan sa na yan. Dyan sa choices na yan. So, marami tayong pwedeng gawin. Yeah. Yes,
39% sa Slido. Tapos 29-21% naman po sa Zoom.
Great. Thank you.
For our second question, Dr. says, the best intervention opportunity for food security involves addressing?
Yes, well, I think I emphasized this, no? The best opportunities are really sa access. Kasi kahit may pera ka, kung wala yung pagkain na kailangan mo sa iyong environment, paano mo siya mabibili? Diba? So, access talaga is the best intervention opportunity. Secondary na yung iba. Kasi, di ba, kahit na 20 pesos lang ang bigas, pero aangkatin pa siya sa malayong lugar. So yung transportation cost mo, kailangan i-factor in mo dun sa 20 pesos per kilo, di ba? So yun yung mga factors na kailangang isipin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Acuin. Sana po nakuha nyo po yung tamang sagot, no? Sa ating audience for those 2 questions. And before we proceed, we will go on po muna sa ating evaluation poll. There are 5 questions that we have right now here on the screen in Zoom. It's a 4-point Likert scale as follows. The panelists demonstrated thorough knowledge of the topic. The panelists were well prepared and organized. The panelists spoke clearly and audibly. The panelists used appropriate language with technical medical jargons adequately explained. And finally, the panelists contributed to new perspectives and knowledge on managing various key health issues. So we will not be closing this evaluation poll po at wala po kaming separate na sinisend as we move on to our next section. Dr. Susie?
Okay, so we're going to give our panelists a minute or two just to say goodbye, to give some parting message to our audience. And we're going to start with Ria. Ria, go ahead.
Hi again po. Thank you so much po for the opportunity. I really appreciate the knowledge po that everyone.
Choppy ka, Ria. Choppy. Ria, again. Say it again. We didn't hear anything.
This very good different perspective. I really enjoyed it po. Kinakabahan po ako. I'm not used to this. But thank you for giving me that chance po. And I hope somehow I was able to impart something. I learned a lot from all of you po. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ria. Ria, some of our audience are asking, saan ba yung affordable gourmet? At gusto yata nilang kumain dyan sa restaurant.
Maybe you could put it in the chat po.
Put it in the chat. Okay, let's go to Ems. Oh, Ems, ikaw naman. Sinigang na sardinas. I cannot forget that. I'm gonna do that. Go ahead, Ems.
Hey, hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I just want to remind the public, there's a friendly nutritionist-dietitian sa mga hospitals, sa community. So if you need recipes or you need to be educated kung paano lutuin or whatever, very willing po kami to help you, and we will be very creative in doing more nutritious and palatable dishes for you. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Ems, head of the PGH dietary section. Okay. Ces, are you there? Ces, your parting words.
Thank you.
Yes. So, thank you very much, TVUP. I hope that our listeners are now more aware about our food system, that they have important roles to play. We are not in a good place in terms of our food security or about our nutritional status as a country, and we can all contribute in so many different ways. I hope that you all do. Kahit na gaano kaliit, makakatulong yan. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you, Dr. Acuin.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to close our webinar now. We've really gone over the time, and I think we got Raymond, we have really a very high
yes, I think this is one of the most liked po na webinars po natin kasi ang taas at least 95% of our audience really like po and strongly agree with based on the evaluation. So maraming salamat po sa ating excellent
lahat kayo mahilig magluto, mahilig sa pagkain. Pilipino talaga, Pinoy na Pinoy. Okay, next week we have a very interesting topic next week. Okay, we're going to have one of a very well-known expert in infertility who will talk about, kasi di ba yung sa COVID, yung disasters. Pag-uusapan natin, hold your breath, wait for it, climate change effects on pregnancy. Meron palang epekto yung pagbabago-bago ng klima sa pagbubuntis. So this is a very, very interesting topic. I hope you will join us. Encourage others to join this webinar. We've got a great speaker, Dr. Eileen Manalo, who is the head of she handles reproductive endocrinology and infertility. So yung palang klima, meron palang epekto yun kung mabubuntis kayo, kung ano ang kalagayan nyo kapag pagka masyadong mainit or paiba-iba yung klima. So we will talk about that. Join us next week. That's going to be a very, very interesting topic. Raymond, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Susie. Again, marami po tayong natutunan for today. Medyo nagugutom na rin po ako. So, that's something to be said about our resource speakers and our topic for today. But before we conclude, we'd like to thank the very hardworking team behind the Stop COVID Deaths webinar series who help us churn out meaningful and quality content week in and week out. We also note that you're very busy individuals and people po, no? So we have created what we call the SCD Shorts, which can be found in youtube.com/TVUPPH, so that you'd be able to get the nuggets of wisdom from each of our webinars. And finally, in youtube.com/TVUPPH, you'll also see an archive po and all of our 111 webinars, and then thereafter this webinar po maging 112 na po siya. You could watch them on the playback and really try to get a sense and try to learn things po if there were some items that you miss. So that concludes our webinar for this week. Magkita-kita po tayo again next week from 12 noon to 2 p.m. sa ating next Friday. It's a date!
Together, we can stop COVID deaths.
So keep safe, keep healthy. See you online!